Question 1. Simplify 4k times 4p. We multiply the front numbers normally and we'll list the letters beside each other. So 4 times 4 is 16 for the front numbers, and if we just list those letters beside each other in our answer, we get 16 kp. Question 2. Find the mean if a set of 16 scores has a sum total of 128. Mean equals the sum of the values divided by the number of values. So we have 128 as the sum of the values, and we're told that there are 16 scores. So 128 divided by 16, we get a final mean of 8. Question 3. Solve y over 5 plus 7 equals 10. To solve an equation, we move all the numbers away from the letter until the letter is on its own. We move numbers by doing the opposite operation to both sides, and we usually move plus or minus numbers before any multiply or divide numbers. In this case, we're going to move the plus 7 first. So to move a plus 7, we do the opposite to both sides, so we'll minus 7 both sides. On the left-hand side, the plus 7 and the minus 7 will cancel each other out, which is what we want, leaving us with a term of y over 5 on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we just calculate 10 minus 7 is 3. Now we've just got to move the 5. Now the 5 is dividing on the left-hand side, so to move it we need to do the opposite of that to both sides. So the opposite of dividing by 5 is multiplying by 5. On the left-hand side, the divide by 5 and the multiply by 5 will cancel each other out, leaving us nicely with y, because solving an equation is about getting the letter on its own. So we'll get y on the left-hand side, and we just calculate whatever's left over on the right-hand side there. 3 times 5 is 15. So final answer, y equals 15. Question 4. Find the value of d in the diagram. Adjacent angles that make up a straight angle add up to 180 degrees. So we can see that 20d and 40 will add up to 180 degrees. So we can make up a bit of an equation here. 20d is going to equal 180 degrees minus 40 degrees. So on the right hand side that will end up being 20d equals 140. And we'll need to get d on its own to solve that little equation we've created. So to get d on its own there, we'll divide by 20 both sides. On the left hand side, the 20 that's effectively multiplying by the d and the divide by 20 will cancel each other out, leaves us with d. On the right hand side, we just do the calculation, 140 divided by 20, we get 7 degrees. So in the end, when we work backwards there, using the rule, d equaled 7 degrees. Question 5. Write your answer in simplest index form if c to the power of 4 is all to the power of 6. When a power is put to another power, we multiply the indices. So if we multiplied the indices here, we get 4 times 6 makes 24. So our answer is just c to the power of 24. Question 6. State the gradient in 6x minus 4y equals minus 16. Right, we need to rearrange 6x minus 4y equals minus 16 to be in the y equals mx plus b form. We want y on its own on the left hand side and the rest of it all on the right hand side. This is going to take us a while. Okay, m is going to be the gradient there, and once it's in that y equals mx plus b form, we can just read off whatever number is in front of the x, that'll be our gradient. But we need to get it in that form first. So the first step for me is to get the y term to be positive. At the moment it's a negative term. And so we're going to add 4y both sides. Effectively I want to move that minus 4y over to the right hand side, which will turn it into a positive at the same time, so that's going to be helpful. On the left hand side, a minus 4y and a plus 4y will cancel out, leaving us just with 6x on the left hand side. On the right hand side we just write those out separately there because they're not like terms. We get on the right hand side 4y minus 16. Okay, to keep going here, to try and get y on its own, we'll add 16 both sides. On the left hand side we can just write that out, and because they're not like terms we can't join them together in any other way. And on the right hand side the minus 16 and the plus 16 cancel each other out, leaving us with just the 4y. Okay, we're almost there. To get the y on its own, let's get rid of the 4 that's multiplying by it by dividing 4 by every term. We have to be careful to make sure we divide by 4 on every term. So we get 6 over 4 if we write that first term in fraction form, 6 over 4x, but we can simplify that down to 3 over 2x later on. The second term there we get 16 divided by 4, which makes 4. And as we wanted, the 4 that's multiplying and the 4 that's dividing will cancel each other out on that right hand side, leaving us with y. And we're almost there for our preferred form here, the y equals mx plus b form. Y is on its own and everything else is on the other side, but let's just switch sides for it. And we get y equals 3 on 2x plus 4. Now 6 on 4 became 3 on 2. If you can find a number that divides into the top and bottom on a fraction, you can do it. In this case, 2 divided into the bottom twice and into the 6 3 times. You can type it into your calculator if you suspect a certain fraction can cancel down to a simpler form. So when we get y equals 3 on 2x plus 4, it's in the right format, and we can just read off the gradient, which is any number in front of the x when it's in that format. So the gradient is in the m position there is 3 on 2, so our gradient is 3 on 2. So apologies for that long solution there, but there was a lot of work to do to turn that original expression into y equals mx plus b form, but it's worth it in the end. Question 7. Find the area of a square here with a side length of 9.6 kilometers. Okay, anytime we'll have a formula, and we will for this one. Our steps for formula solutions is to write the formula on the first line. On the next line down we substitute all the numbers we've got. We'll calculate our answer on the third line, and we'll remember to check our units to make sure they're correct as our last step. So the formula here, we have an area equals side squared for a square. So A equals S squared. We only really have one number to work with here. And so when we substitute our side length of 9.6 in the second line there, we get an answer of 9.6 squared, which ends up being 92.16. Now we were originally in kilometers, but when you've got area, that becomes square units. So our answer is in kilometers squared. Question 8. Find the value of the shorter side, h, below, leaving your answer as a whole number. Right, we have a right angle triangle. Mr. Pythagoras would say that you can find the letter here by doing the letter squared equaling the bigger side squared minus the smaller side squared. The reason there's a minus there is we're finding one of the shorter sides in this right angled triangle. So our letter is h, so h squared will equal the biggest side squared, which in this case is 52 squared, minus the smaller side squared, which is 48 squared here. So let's calculate that out. H squared, 52 squared, I'm here to tell you is 2704, minus 48 squared, which is 2304. We'll just simplify that right hand side a little bit to get h squared equals 400. And to go from h squared to h, we will do the opposite of squaring to both sides so that h is on its own there by square rooting both sides. So h is square root of 400, which is 20. Final answer, h equals 20. So because we're finding one of the shorter sides, we use the minus version of Pythagoras there. Question 9. Factorise m squared minus 36. Okay, we don't have any common letters or common numbers here to factorise normally. So we know this is going to be one of those fancy difference of two squareds questions. The difference of two squareds, you'll recall that if we can write two expressions as one thing squared minus another thing squared, that fits into a special pattern in which the factorised version is one bracket with the first term minus the second term and multiplied by another bracket with the first term plus the second term. So I'm sure you might have seen this pattern before, or you will soon anyway. So we will be able to express m squared minus 36 as m squared minus 6 squared. So if we can do that, we can then write out the pattern for the factorised answer. We'll have an m minus 6 in one bracket and an m plus 6 in the second bracket. So that's a special result and it's worth remembering. You'll know you have to need this, you have to use this fancy shortcut every time you try and factorise and you can't find any letters or numbers that go into each of them. So it's worth looking out for this. They ask these a lot in questions, in tests or quizzes. Question 10. Find the value of x correct to one decimal place in the diagram below. Alrighty, now from the 19 degrees that we're given there, this question involves an opposite side of 34 and an adjacent side with x on it. So when a question in this situation involves an opposite and an adjacent side, we need to know that that's a tan question. Tan theta, or tan of the angle, equals whatever's on the opposite side over whatever's on the adjacent side. So when we fill that in for this question, we get tan of 19 degrees, and the number in the opposite position is 34, and the letter in this case in the adjacent position is the x. So once we've written that out, we've got an x on the bottom there, which we have to be extra careful with. What I like to do is to swap those two over and write it out again with the x on its own. So the x moves to where the tan 19 was, and the tan 19 moves where the x was, and we get x equals 34 on top and tan 19 ends up on the bottom. Then that can be put straight into our calculator and we get an x value of 98.7. We've rounded that off to one decimal place because that's what the question asks for. So we need to know our sine, cos and tan type things. We need to know which sides are involved, and we set it up that way. Gotta be a bit careful, extra careful when the letter's on the bottom though.